The following podcast contains explicit language. You're listening to the Cinematography Podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image and the people who make it happen. Coming to you from the world headquarters of Hot Rod Cameras in Hollywood, California, are your hosts, Ben Rock and Illya Friedman.
Hey there, Ben Rock.
Hey, Illya Friedman, what's up? How are you?
Hey.
How is your COVID?
COVID seems to be now complete. I am better. I'm like all but 90% better. So yes, I'm back to normalcy now.
Let it be shown that when I got COVID, I took off like 2 weeks of the podcast. You didn't miss anything.
I've tried my best. I probably should have taken some time off. But anyway, hey, we got a special episode today. Today is a bonus episode. So bonus episode, we're going to be doing a quick just wrap right now about what we did a couple of weeks ago out at the BEA/NAB convention. You remember that, don't you, Ben?
No, I have no memory of that at all. No. Well, I mean, unfortunately, I wasn't there for your interview. You were there for mine, but my plane ticket had me out, and Adam Bricker got rescheduled. So this will be my first time hearing your interview with Adam Bricker.
Yeah. Adam Bricker, DP of Hacks and Chef's Table. And actually, if you have not been watching Hacks, the season 4 is already out now again, or it's already started. So it's over on Max and you can check it out. I have been enjoying Hacks season 4. It's such a fantastic show. I'm really glad that we got to make the planets align and that Adam and us could both be in Vegas at the same time to talk about his career and talk about film school and talk about like his journey. We did it in front of a live audience at the BEA. The BEA is the nonprofit side of NAB. They specialize in a event that is really geared towards students and towards faculty of prestigious film programs, broadcasting programs across the country. And we had probably about 60 plus people show up for Adam Bricker. And we do a live Q&A at the end. So if you are listening to this episode or watching it on YouTube, there is a Q&A with the audience all the way at the very end. And it's a really great conversation. Adam has been on the show before. I've known him probably almost 20 years or something like that. And we really get into a lot of great stuff. I think it'll be particularly interesting to students who want to, hear a success story of someone who has, kind of made their own path, have gone off in one direction, didn't know how they were going to end up there. And then the forking paths that they took to finally get them to where they are today, which is pretty amazing. And he's probably one of the newest members of the American Society of Cinematographers, which is super cool.
I was excited to get to hang out with him for a few hours while we were still in Vegas, although I left that day. But yeah, I can't wait to hear the interview. Shall we just jump right in?
Well, let's jump right into the interview with Adam Bricker.
The Cinematography Podcast interview.
With me today is Adam Bricker. Adam is a fantastic cinematographer. And like I said a few minutes ago, if you were here, he is probably best known for his incredible work on all now 3 seasons, coming up to a 4th season of Hacks, which, please. Shot here in Vegas for a large part of it, and 4th season starts April 28th, I think it is. So like really in a couple of weeks you can start watching the 4th season.
April 10th. It's coming this Thursday.
April 10th.
You're not
Holy
coming
crap.
to the watch party. It's going to be nuts.
Okay. Well, I thought it was a little bit later, but this is great news. So Hacks, one of my favorite shows, and also Chef's Table. If you've ever seen Chef's Table on Netflix, Adam was very, very influential in setting the look for that show and doing a ton of work on that. And do I have it right? There's a new season of that coming really soon too?
I think that is maybe April 28th.
Maybe that is April 28th. Okay,
An honest mistake.
So this month you're gonna more and more of Adam. So anyway, without further adu, welcome to the podcast, Adam.
Oh, thank you, Illya. It's so good to be back.
Yeah, it's great. Adam was in before, and he and I have known each other. It's probably going on 15 years now, or something like that, and. It's been a little bit since you were last on the show, but since that time, you've become a member of the ASC, the American Society of Cinematographers. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very honored.
If you're not familiar with it, it is a private club that is invite only. Cinematographers basically get together and say, who do we think out there is doing incredible work, and who should we invite into our fold? And Adam was very fortunate to recently get inducted. He's one of the most recent inductees, and your work speaks for itself, though. So I think that we will talk a little bit about your work.
Yeah, sure.
But I really want to get into how this all happened, because I know you were a film school kid. You went to film school, and you went to a couple of film schools. Let's talk about the early days of Adam Bricker. How did this all get started for you?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Chicago, and my family moved to New Jersey. And in New Jersey, with my 3 younger sisters, I developed a love of making movies. For my 13th birthday or something, I got a camcorder, and it was I don't know, just always loved making stuff. And when it was time to decide where to go to college, I decided to go back to Chicago and attend DePaul University. And when I arrived at DePaul, they had just started a brand new digital cinema program. I think it was like within the computer school there. And it was the program was maybe like a year or two old when I started. Really fresh, but like a really exciting sort of scrappy program. I think like the professors were excited about it. The DVX 100 probably had just come out. We were sort of on the precipice of this digital revolution, and they were, independent filmmakers themselves, and were so excited to give these film students cameras to go just shoot stuff. So we ran all over the streets of Chicago, shooting music videos and film noirs at night, and it was just kind of like an immersive, hands-on, wonderful experience. One summer, a friend of a friend was headed to California. I had never been. He was going to go to Los Angeles to attend the summer program at the University of Southern California Film School. And USC offers a select group of classes. Essentially, I think maybe there's some application process, but essentially it's maybe a way to keep professors employed over the summer. I'm not totally sure, but he was a passionate photographer. I was just sort of like a general filmmaker. The class that he had enrolled in was a beginning cinematography class. And this was a really eye-opening experience for me. At DePaul, I had been, a one-man band making things, shooting, directing, editing, my friends holding the boom, us handing off. Here at USC, it was my first realization that there were different roles on a film set and different career paths that one could take. I applied to transfer and was really lucky to be accepted, and then finished my education. I finished my undergraduate at USC, and then when I graduated,
everything went great.
It was perfect. Yeah,
there was
I booked chef's table, and then here we are.
There were no dues to pay. There was no.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so okay. Yeah, I think that may be a question that some of the people here today, in this crowd, thank you all again for being here, might be wondering is how different is the professional world experience from the film school experience? Is there, ultimately at the end of the day, that when you're working with your peers on, student productions, is it more or less analogous to the world of Hollywood?
I think that for me at least, it was a very gradual change. It wasn't, day one out of film school, I wasn't on like a professional set. There are degrees of, it all sort of occurs naturally and like in a very human sort of way. I think just even going back a little bit, I think it was really interesting for me in retrospect, the two differences between the two types of film schools.
Sure.
The first film school being really like, here's a camera, go shoot. Whereas at USC, I came in as a junior, so I immediately started production, but they were actually very protective of the camera. And at USC, your freshman and sophomore year, you're mostly learning, theory and critical studies, and they withhold that production experience. And I think that there's some benefit to that. I think having like a really strong baseline of knowledge as to why you're doing something before you do it is really important. And that's something that I think I've carried on through my career. But at the same time, I felt sort of like I had a leg up that junior year because I'd made so much stuff. So I see pros and cons to both approaches. When I graduated, I was trying to work within the system. I started loading and seconding, and had a plan that I would eventually join the camera union by obtaining 100 non-union days. I was submitting those, and I would climb my way up the camera department ladder, eventually becoming a DP. And maybe 2 years into that, I was working on an independent feature, and the DP, I still remember this, his name was Tim Naylor, a wonderful DP based out of New York, and he pulled me aside at lunch and was asking me about my path and what my dreams were, and I told him, and he was like, I think you need to quit this crew stuff cold turkey. I think if you want to be a DP, you've got to be a DP. And that was a real turning point for me. I took that to heart. I saved money. I got a film job that was flexible so that I could make myself available as a DP. And really from that point forward, with some exceptions, I presented myself primarily as a cinematographer, and that just meant shooting like whatever I could shoot. I shot some of the weirdest things, the weirdest music videos, and a rich kid was financing a short film, and a weird infomercial type thing. But with each of those projects, I sort of just like put my all into them and sort of tried to make them my own. And then it was very much a story of like one thing leads to another, and with that mentality, great success.
Well, that was a few years in the process, though, because I know that you didn't graduate, immediately from USC and book Chef's Table, and there was this period of dues paying and weird films and all kinds of other projects in between. And it sounds like this incredible turning point with this advice where you just had to go cold turkey and become a DP. Let's talk about those lean years a little bit. Let's talk about, I mean, I remember you because at one point also you started a camera rental company. You and a couple of buddies, and you started a little business, and it was like, it seemed like a way to make yourself more employable perhaps at the time, to get more work. Can you talk a little bit about like where that came from? And then
it was with my two best friends who followed me out to California. We had met at DePaul in Chicago, and they moved out to LA, and we formed our partnership. We called it Three Guys and a Red, and it was literally just the three of us, and we bought one red camera, and that was very, very important for us. We having a camera so that when I was shooting these weird projects, I could plus them and make them my own. That luxury served me really well. And then we tried to keep it sustainable by forming it into some sort of company and renting it out to other people. But it was mostly just like kind of grew with us as our careers grew. It still exists. We eventually got a cease and desist from Red to not use their name, so we shortened it to 3GR. But I don't know. Now Red sponsors my shows, so it's fabulous. Full circle. Let's go.
That's great. Okay, so would you say that there was a lot of benefit, though, to actually having your own gear and having that ability to kind of get out there and do the projects? And were you able to sell yourself a lot more successfully because you had this infrastructure behind you too?
I think so. For me, it was. I don't recommend it for everyone. I mean, I think fortunately, like the people that I was partnered with a camera assistant that was working regularly, Charlie, one of my best friends, and then the third member, but probably the most important is Brett, and he's a production accountant. So like I had people around this endeavor that were smart and knew what they were doing. I think in the spirit of like, just shoot it, just be a DP, go out there. I think like the most important asset you have in that journey is time. So I always hesitate against people bogging themselves down with loans or debt, or like you just sort of want to stay in the game and wait for that break to happen and keep building and buy as much time as possible. So I could see how it's sort of like a tricky thing, but for us it was nice to like have a camera that we knew how to use, that was beyond the budgetary scope of the projects that we were allowed to shoot, so that I could build a reel and that type of a thing. So it worked out for us.
That's great. I'm really glad that it did. What do you credit as your big break, though? What do you credit as your break that kind of like, and it doesn't have to be, your most recent stuff, but was there a project in particular that put you on the map of agents or people out there, or was there a particular project that you did that really got you a lot of attention? Let's follow this career trajectory.
Sure.
You're out of school, you've got this rental house company, you're doing weird projects, and now what comes next?
Well, I think the first thing that I shot that people really saw was Chef's Table, and that came through a relationship that I had developed with the director, Brian McGinn, who was one of the co-EPs. But if you trace that relationship back, I first met Brian because I had agreed to shoot a short film for free, and he had seen a cut of it and admired it, and then asked me to go do an infomercial type travel job with him. So it was sort of still in that spirit, very much so. Like, this wasn't like I didn't have an agent or anything. Nobody was putting me out for things. I was like scrapping and meeting people and going along this journey.
Do you remember what that infomercial was specifically?
It wasn't an infomercial. It was higher quality. It was actually quite good. It was fun. It was fun. It was an LG. It wasn't an infomercial. It was a commercial, like a branded LG Funny or Die hybrid thing where we traveled the world, traveled the country selling a new LG phone with Dave Franco and Chris Mintz-Plasse, and it was sort of a comedy sketch thing.
You had some A-listers. You had some talent in there too.
No, it was great. It was great, and so I don't mean to diminish that, but it wasn't. That said, it also wasn't when I was graduating from USC Film School. It wasn't necessarily what I dreamed of, but nor was
infomercials.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was the hope.
Totally. But nor was Chef's Table. I mean, when that Jiro Dreams of Sushi had obviously come out, and that was the inspiration, and this was sort of a spin-off of that, and that was something that I greatly admired. But I'll be honest, graduating from film school, I was envisioning shooting Christopher Nolan movies, not making food documentaries.
Sure.
And it was sort of this mentality of whatever the opportunity is, you make the most of it, you find your voice in it, you make it your own. The story that I always tell is that, prior to Chef's Table, I had, very limited documentary experience, and I honestly had zero experience shooting food. So I'm very, very lucky that Brian and David thought I was the right person for it, because it makes no sense on paper.
Well, I'll just interject real quick that if you don't know this, in Hollywood in particular, it's always much easier to get any job if the producers think you've already done that same job before, and not having that background in food probably for a lot of people would have been a huge hurdle to overcome, because that's like saying, I hired this person to shoot a car commercial who's never shot a car before. It's like,
totally.
So they took a real gamble on you.
And the only way it works is if you find collaborators and you find your people and you believe in them and they believe in you, and then you go on and do new things. And I'm so grateful to Andrew, Brian, and David for the opportunity. I think, I also think same for Will. He had definitely more documentary experience than I had, but I'm not quite sure he had much food experience. And the thing that I'll say is, I think, through our own naivete about how people make efficient documentaries or how people shoot tabletop food, we didn't know the tricks. And because we didn't know them, we sort of did it our own way. I would light dishes the same way that I would light an actor in a movie, in a film. Just really simply, put it against a window, get your contrast ratio right. There were no bells and whistles that I've since learned in the world of tabletop. And I think we landed on sort of a filmic approach, and one that I'm very proud of, and one that continues on to this day. So
you're being very humble. It is one of the most referenced and most copied sort of looks now for food. And I didn't give any background for myself, and we'll really quickly get back to you, Adam. Yeah. But I run a company called Hot Rod Cameras. It's in the heart of Hollywood, well now, which is technically Burbank. But really, the thing about it is we get people who come in all the time asking about gear, and for people who are doing cooking shows, for people who are doing shows about food, and almost the number one thing they say is, and it's going to be like Chef's Table. It's like Chef's Table meets, a cook's tour, but it's Chef's Table. And that look that you guys crafted for that first season, which has continued on in one form or another for the subsequent seasons and for the spin-off shows, is this, it is so I want to say, iconic now that even The Simpsons have spoofed it. So The Simpsons did an entire segment all about Lunch Lady Dora's Chef's Table story, which is phenomenal. And I highly, highly recommend that you guys go to YouTube and watch it if you haven't seen it, because it's spot on and hysterical. That's got to feel like really high praise.
That's definitely one of my greatest achievements, is the Simpsons thing. I mean, it's so crazy. Yeah, I mean, thank you for saying all of that. I appreciate it. I mean, I think
it's true though. It's like I'm not just saying it. It's saying it because it's true. So you don't have to say it about yourself. That's why I'm here. That's what I'm doing. So, but okay. So Chef's Table. Ends up being a monster hit for Netflix. It's been running for years. They've spun off other shows.
It's currently their longest running series.
Yeah.
That's still
in production.
Yeah.
And they do a pizza one. They do a bunch of different ones.
We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary, and for that anniversary, we've celebrated by doing a special season of Chef's Table Legends. So Jose Andres and Alice Waters and Thomas Keller and Brian McGinn and I went to London and shot an episode that I'm really excited about with Jamie Oliver, which is really, really fun.
I did not have nearly such a glamorous career when I was shooting. I used to shoot a terrible show called Blind Date, and on Blind Date, one of the perks of that show was that we got to eat the food that like the daters were also eating like on the show at another table. I'm assuming the food that you get to eat on this show, like, do you ever get to eat the stuff that you were shooting?
Absolutely. No, I mean, in all seriousness, we're so lucky that I'm still, Charlie, who we mentioned from 3GR, works on the show. I'm my crew. They're my best friends from film school, and we have gotten to travel the world and have all of these adventures and eat at the best restaurants, on Earth, which is fabulous. I think
that's quite a perk. That's quite a perk.
But yeah. In all seriousness, I think for these chefs that we're profiling and telling their life story, their food is their work. So you have to eat it to understand it and to appreciate it and to be able to tell the story appropriately. I think something that I've been thinking about as we get to the 10-year anniversary is that in the beginning of Chef's Table, it wasn't even called Chef's Table. It was called Chef's Story, and it was on a relatively new streamer. We weren't sure if people were going to actually watch it. We were just trying to figure out how to make the show, and in that sense, it was kind of low stakes. Then once the show, picked up steam and people's eyeballs came on it, there became this sort of pressure as a filmmaker, just knowing that for better or worse, the work that we were about to do was more oftentimes not going to be the definitive telling of their story. So you had to put in extra care, I think, with that responsibility. And that involved eating the tasting menu several times to make sure that I knew exactly what the right shot was going to be.
I think the only way to tell really how to shoot food is to taste it first.
Absolutely. So, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so I want to jump forward to Hacks here. Tell me a little bit about the journey then from Chef's Table to getting to shoot this incredible show, Hacks.
Yeah. Well, that was a gradual long build. I first started shooting Chef's Table in 2014 is when we went into production on the first season, and I shot Hacks. I think that first season was 2021 or the end of 2020. But you know what I mean. There was a 5-6 year gap in there, and that time was spent just sort of beefing up my narrative bona fides and trying to shoot feature films, independent feature films, scripted series. I had some wonderful experiences shooting larger television shows, season 2 coming after a season 1 DP. Sure. And just sort of working my way up there to hoping to get to the point where when the right script came along that was magical, my resume would support me potentially getting the job. And I was just so lucky that the Hacks pilot, which is it's one of the best pilots I've ever. It's one of the best. It won the Emmy for best screenplay. I mean, if it's out there in the world online, and you should definitely read it. I remember reading it at my parents' house and being like, I have to drop everything and make a deck and do whatever I can and desperately try to get this project. I just completely fell in love and was so lucky that Jen, Paul, and Lucia were down to have me shoot it. But it's sort of like what we were talking about before. Like, I'd never done anything at that scale. I hadn't shot an HBO show before, and they, I'm just very lucky that they trusted me that I could do it and wanted to go on this journey of collaboration. And our 4th season comes out next week, and I'm just so lucky to be a part of the team.
Yeah. Let me ask you about that deck, because clearly it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It landed you this job, and it's now changed the trajectory of your career and your life. What went into this deck besides care and attention? I mean, how do you craft a deck to pitch yourself, to pitch your idea for the show?
Yeah, I think So I read the script, and there were immediately like some images and some films that came to mind that I started just culling from, and oftentimes, I think I'll build a deck. Sometimes you have to build a deck to get the interview, and so it can be just a way of expressing that you were interested. And seeing if that sort of catches, and they're like, okay, well, this cinematographer put some work into this deck. Let's at least meet him and hear this person's thoughts. In this instance, I was lucky that they wanted to meet with me outside of submitting anything, which allowed me. This happened all very quickly, and the deck wasn't finished, but it gave me like a good working on a deck gives you several hours to think about a project and formulate your thoughts. And I met with Jen, Paul, and Lucia, the showrunners, on Zoom, and we just had a great conversation, and we were aligned on a lot of things. And they obviously had been thinking about this project for many years, and Lucia is one of the most visual directors I've ever worked with, and she brought some things to my attention that I'd never heard of. And I was able to sort of incorporate my early ideas and her ideas that she brought on the Zoom into a deck and follow up saying, hey, great, what a wonderful conversation. I've sort of taken what we discussed there, and here's a preliminary idea of what this show could look like. I think, with decks now, because of Shot Deck, really, the field of play has been leveled. It's much harder to stand out with a deck because everyone has a Shot Deck account and can put something really beautiful together. So back in the day, 2020,
yeah.
you had to scratch and claw and dig to find these stills that were in your head, and now they're just there conveniently with the stroke of a keyboard. So I think what that means is that since everyone can do it, you've got to just actually be coming at it from a sincere, honest perspective. Like, these are actually my thoughts on this project, and this is why these thoughts resonate, and that's the way to sort of stand out and separate yourself.
Yeah, I think that empathy and honesty goes further than almost anything else these days, including AI pitch decks and so many other things that I see happening.
What a nightmare.
Okay, so Hacks, of course, got you an ASC award nomination, and it has been it seems to me like every season you kind of like up the stakes and up the ante and up everything. You probably can't say much about what's about to happen, this week on April 10th, but anything you can say about how this season might have been different from your experience in the previous seasons? Did you have to raise the stakes even more? Do you spend a lot of time outside of Vegas? What can you say?
Yeah, well, I think each season of a television show challenges you, and I think as an ambitious filmmaker and ambitious cinematographer, you never want to repeat yourself, and our showrunners are the same way. I mean, the story wouldn't be worth telling if it wasn't going to the next level and the stakes weren't escalating. So I think it's a wonderful season. I'm so proud of it. It was we just finished production about a month ago, and we're on this like really, really tight release schedule. So it was a race against the finish. We still have 2 more episodes to color.
Oh, wow.
So we're like still a little bit in it. But I think it's I'm not far enough removed from it to have great perspective on it yet. But I think it's really, really special, and I loved making it. I think I've shot every episode of the series, and I know that's rare.
That's very rare, especially these days.
Yeah, and I think I've learned a lot doing that. I think that television can be challenging, and the schedule's tight, and when you're ambitious, you make it even harder on yourself, and you keep refining and refining and refining and trying to develop the systems to make it better. And I think that it's nice getting a lot of reps in, shooting 30 plus episodes of a television show, and kind of just expanding on the craft and making improvements. I think that it's been a really valuable exercise for me.
I think that is a great place for us to open it up to questions. I'm going with the first hand that I saw up was this gentleman with glasses right here, and I see both of you, and we'll get to you in just a moment. Sir, what's your question?
I love hacks. When you're working with comedians who might improvise in terms of lighting them, are you focused on lighting spaces for them to be able to do something spontaneous? Or do you block it to the point where you dial it in, you know where they're going to be in that space to get the most beautiful flattering light? Before you answer that?
Okay, so the question was, do you light for areas? Do you light for people? How does your lighting influence the blocking and everything else?
Yeah. Well, I think Hacks, even though it is a comedy, it's a very considered script, and our showrunners are on set every day, and they're often word for word on the script. So that said, there is improvisation in the show. But it isn't. The way they like to approach it is to have editorial flexibility to be able to cut both sides of the conversation together, no matter what they decide in the edit. So there isn't necessarily blocking improvisation. The blocking is pretty regimented to allow for that editorial flexibility. Creatively, the show, the look revolves around Deborah Vance, and we sort of designed that look based on her heyday as a Las Vegas legend, stand-up comedian, and all of our references were super filmic, Behind the Candelabra, the film Judy, and so it's this really fun mix of emotional, kind of visual storytelling with an emphasis on lighting cut against this comedic dialogue. So to answer your question about spaces and frames, I think it's different just based on each scene sometime and each environment and sort of what we're after creatively. Sometimes, it's a naturalistic show, so the environment of the spaces is really influencing a lot of the lighting decisions. But then within the frame itself, I think we're doing more painting than you would on your standard comedy.
All right. This lady with the glasses right here. You go ahead. All right. The question was, can you share more of your experience on shooting American Vandal?
Yeah. So American Vandal, one of my favorite shows. We just had the most fun making that. I remember it wasn't even a script. It was more of like a bizarre outline that I couldn't quite understand. Like, is this serious? What is it? For those of you who don't know, American Vandal is a fake documentary about vandalism at a high school. 27 cars in the faculty parking lot have been vandalized with graffitied dicks. And 2 high school filmmakers from their video club, they go out to, in true crime docu fashion, solve the murder. The person, the class clown who has been accused, claims he's innocent, and they might believe him. And it sort of is like it's got like serial vibes. It's really, really fun. What I loved about making American Vandal was that Tony Ascenda, the showrunner, was all in. And I referred to it as a fake documentary because we did create a distinction between fake documentary and mockumentary. In our world, what you're seeing, it it isn't making fun of the documentary genre. This is actually the documentary that the kids were making. And for them, this is dead serious. This is the biggest thing they've ever done. So it was really fun as filmmakers to put ourselves in their shoes and shoot the way that they would shoot. We visited a lot of high schools and video clubs and watched stuff. And I don't know, it was a great adventure. We shot on, in the end, like over 30 different cameras because we were just regimented about each different source that they were pulling into the documentary being authentic. So we were renting cameras from Panavision, but also from Home Depot and eBay, and it was just like it was great fun.
Your question, please. The question is work-life balance. How do you live to work, or do you have some balance with a personal life?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I think, for me, this is what I've always dreamed of doing. So so much of my identity is built into being a cinematographer and being a filmmaker that it's hard. It's hard to create a differentiation between the two, and it can be challenging to find balance. I think that it happens naturally. I think when you're lucky enough to be doing something that you love, it doesn't necessarily feel like work, but then also sometimes it does feel like work. So I don't know, I maybe struggle with that, and it is one of those things where, at least for me, to do it the way that I want to do it, you have to sort of be all in. Yeah, working on it.
All right. The gentleman back here with the glasses.
It's very helpful for us to have you here, so thank you. When you look through a viewfinder today, what do you see in terms of framing and lighting and the whole scene that maybe you didn't see at some other time in your career?
So the question is, how much more do you see when you're in the viewfinder? How much more perspective do you have now at this point of your career than versus the early point of your career?
It's a beautiful question, and I don't know. Maybe I'll be annoying and take it literally. Once you reach a certain stage of your career, they no longer even let you look through a viewfinder. You have a camera operator that is operating for you, and you're in the back looking at a monitor or giving loose notes. I think, and with that in mind, I think like what I've learned as the projects get bigger and more daunting, more ambitious, larger crews, that it's a lot more project management than it is looking through a viewfinder. And I think the challenge in that is that you have to sort of maintain the creativity and really always be circling back to the script. And I build all of these like little safety mechanisms into my prep to make sure that I am always remembering what is most important, and I have a whole star system in my scriptation so that when we're in rehearsal, I'm like, oh, was this? Because it can be really overwhelming, the scope of the production, and you sort of lose that intimacy that you're talking about of that eye through a viewfinder, and you're trying to do both things at once.
All right, here in the front.
As a cinematographer, do you approach storytelling differently when you're doing narrative versus doc?
All right, so the question is your approach, narrative versus documentary. Well, what's the difference?
I don't know. I think it's weird. I want my documentary work to be like a movie, and I want my movies to feel more like documentaries. So I think that they're obviously different muscles. I've been in a really good rhythm right now I've been lucky to do a season of Hacks and then spend the summer traveling with my friends and shooting chef's tables and then going back to Hacks. And I think you're working different muscles from a project management perspective, like we were just talking about, but then also just, from simple thing like the way the camera moves and really from lighting. I learned early on in Chef's Table because, I was just me and sometimes a gaffer and a producer helping carry stuff from the truck. That was actually for me going to be more important to figure out what lights I needed to turn off versus what I needed to add. And so that was like a quick trick and a quick philosophy to making really beautiful documentary work, was just like turn some lights off, keep things single source, everything's the same color temperature. What can you remove and take away? And sometimes when I take a step back on the set of Hacks and I look at the mess of lighting I've created, I'm like, remember what's important. Start turning things off, take things away, you know what I mean? So I think both of them rub off on each other, and they're really good muscles to be working.
All right. We've got a question in the back row, gentleman with the tie.
Yeah. About how many days do you typically have for an episode of Chef's Table in terms of shooting?
The question is, how many days to make an episode of Chef's Table?
I think that we tend to have somewhere between like 8 and 10 shoot days per episode, which is a decent amount, I think, for...
Sounds generous.
Yeah, but then you think about it, and once again, you're tasked with telling the definitive life story of a person that's lived decades, and it can become once you're also trying to make it cinematic. So I think once you put all of those pressures on yourself, the 9 days quickly feels like far too little. So you have to be really efficient with it. And I honestly, prep a Chef's Table episode with Brian McGinn, the director, the same way that I would prep a scripted show. We run through the narrative over and over again. Instead of having a script, we sort of build out an outline that eventually will become a schedule. And we're just hunting for efficiencies. How much, when you watch an episode, for me, I want it to feel like we lived with this person for 6 months. So, I'm doing, you're thinking about how many different scenarios can we put them in, different times of day, and then, on a level deeper than that, you're thinking, how can these times of day relate to the story? Where are we in the emotional arc of the episode? And then you're also doing stupid stuff, like you go to Target and you get a bunch of shirts, and you're like, every scene I'm changing their shirt, so it feels like I was here for 6 months. You know what I mean? Like you're really milking it. They loved it.
Let me just follow up on that great question, because 9 days sounds generous, but that doesn't actually also encapsulate how many units you have, how many cameras you're doing, and all the other logistics, because you're traveling the world to this and then setting up shop, and it's at the end of the day, it's a documentary.
Yeah.
So it's like there is so much stuff that you're packing in there. Give us a little bit of the logistics of that. How many cameras? How many units? How big is your team? Some documentaries are like 2 people. Right. Yours is, I'm guessing, 3. So I don't know.
No, it's we've found a balance, I think, over the 10 years, and I'm really happy with the crew arrangement that we currently have. So it's myself, a Steadicam operator, and a focus puller, and then a general we call him a data manager, but because we shoot on, we shoot 6K, there's a lot of data to manage.
Sure.
But it really is, we carry, and then there's additional production support, a director, a producer, some local hires, sound.
Of course, yeah.
And, it's a good mix. It allows us to, we shoot single camera. Mm-hmm. We carry 2 cameras and we pull the second one out for interviews, or if we splinter off our data manager to go shoot B-roll.
So data manager / second unit.
The data manager on Chef's Table from the beginning on my episodes has been Charlie Panion from 3GR.
Yeah.
Who, I'm just looking for efficiencies, like how, I want to spend time with the chef in the kitchen, but I do want to traverse all of northern Sweden and get every angle. Let's figure out a way to break this down a little bit and have Charlie go off. But also creatively, like Charlie Panion's compositions are stunning, and he is like a huge reason why the show is what it is, and quickly graduated from data manager to DP and has shot many episodes of the series. So a luxury to have Charlie on the crew. But then, gear-wise, it's like we have enough stuff that we have duplicates for things if something goes awry out, traveling abroad. But we try to keep it as lean.
Do you have a person responsible for your grip and electric? Do you have a G&E?
We tend to hire that person locally because that gear is going to be sourced there.
That's right. And traveling with a lot of G&E sucks. So that's a tough one.
Yeah. But then, there's some stuff that in some places you can't get that's really important.
And you have to.
Astera tubes and light ribbon are huge for so we might bring like a duffel bag of some things. But it's not like we're scrapping it out there making a documentary, but at the same time, it's like I said, we don't want it to be a documentary. I'm looking to make a feature film about this person, and it can be challenging when you raise the stakes to that level with a small crew.
Yeah. Other questions? Oh, we got a question right here in the front row.
You talked about tying the look of hacks deeply to the script. I was just wondering if there are any red flags or something that you see when you are approaching a look for something and it ends up being a look that you ultimately don't want it doesn't feel like. How do you know if you're going the wrong way or the right way when it comes to developing a look?
The question was, how do you know you're going the right way with the look of the show? How do you know?
Yeah, so I think your intuition in that instance is what they're after from you as a cinematographer. I think if they're doing the higher right, that's what they're getting is your taste in that scenario. Now how you yourself figure out if it's right, for me it's just I can see it in my head. I am looking for ways to I'm looking to find images or to shoot tests that can get what's in my head out into something practical so I can have some proof that it exists and then sort of examine that. And then, you're sort of just interrogating that, I think. And what was really fun about Hacks was that, we developed the look, but then we refined and it changes so much over the course of that, especially that first season. And then it was sort of there and it existed, and it was fun to in season 2 sort of play on what we'd already established and kind of break that apart and do riffs on that. Now, when I'm putting together a lookbook for season 4, I'll be honest, by design, most of the shots that I'm pulling from are from the first 3 seasons of Hacks because I want the show to be cohesive, and sometimes that can be challenging because the show takes us to places that we never imagined when we were shooting season 1. But I want the world creation to be rich, and I want you to look at it and be like, okay, that's Hacks. And when I'm judging exposure on a shot, I want to know how bright it is in relation to where we've been before. So it's all sort of answering itself.
We've got time for 2 more questions at most. So last questions. Gentlemen in the back with the glasses.
Since you had 2 kind of very different academic experiences, what do you think students in the audience here should be looking to take away from their academic experience that will help them be successful in a professional environment?
All right. The question is, you went to 2 different film schools. You had 2 different academic experiences. What advice do you have for students who should be looking to, what should they be taking from their academic experience that will translate into the real world for them?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm jealous of the students. I think film school is really, really fun, and being able to just make stuff all the time with your friends, there is nothing better, and I cherish those moments when I get to do it now professionally, but in film school you're doing it all the time. So I think one, just living in that and enjoying that and making as much stuff as possible. I think practically speaking from a career perspective, my earliest jobs, and quite honestly the jobs that I have now, all originated from relationships that I established in film school. So I think networking is the cold term for that, but I think in reality that's just collaborating and taking this opportunity while you're in film school to find your people and knowing that those people are going to be with you on this journey for many years to come, and just fostering those relationships as naturally as possible.
All right. Time for one more question. Sir, that's you.
How does your job affect the way you watch television and film?
All right. The question is how does your work change the way you look at other people's stuff out there when you watch TV or movies?
Well, for starters, it's harder to find the time to watch the stuff. That's the I really do value the time off that I have when I have like a season pass to a movie theater and try to go almost daily and try to see everything. And my wife is also in the business. She's a television writer, and she keeps us really up to date as much as possible with our television viewing. I love it. There's nothing better than watching a good show or seeing a good movie, and more oftentimes than not, I'll be honest, like I'm inspired by it. I think like even stuff that is on this week, like watching The Studio, I'm like, oh my goodness, get me back out there, find me a script, I am ready to go. Like,
it's a great show.
It's a great show, and it's just so beautifully shot. And before that, like watching Severance, I'm like, get me a script, get me back out there, I'm ready to go. Like, so, I don't know, I think positively on the watching of content. I'm pro.
All right, I think that's going to do it for our time. Hey, Adam, thank you so much for coming out and doing this. This is so much fun.
Yeah, thank you guys for your insightful questions. I really appreciate it.
This has been the Cinematography Podcast, presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory on the web at hotrodcameras.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our show on iTunes and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening.